Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm your storyteller, ready to take you on amazing journeys through different tales. How are you guys? Today's audiobook is Blue Highways: A Journey into America by William Least Heat Moon. Let's get started. The winter of discontent had set in. My life was adrift, and the moorings that once anchored me, marriage, job, and home, had come loose, leaving me to float aimlessly. The marriage that was meant to last had ended, and the university job I'd held was no more. Faced with this emptiness, I found myself yearning for movement, for a journey that could stitch together the torn fabric of my life. And so, I took to the road. Not just any road, but the blue highways, those forgotten routes marked in blue on old maps, winding through the backcountry of America. They are the roads less traveled, the ones that bypass the interstates and cut through the heart of small-town America. I set out in my van, ghost dancing to discover what was left of the country that wasn't captured by the glare of neon lights or the din of progress. The journey began in Columbia, Missouri, and with no specific destination in mind, I let the road lead. What I sought wasn't just geography, but stories, the kind you find in diners, truck stops, and local bars. Stories from people who lived on the fringes of the American dream, people who hadn't been swept up by the tide of change but instead had chosen, or been left, to remain in these small pockets of existence. One of the first stops was Dime Box, Texas, where I met a man who spoke of a life tied to the land, where changes came slow and tradition held firm. Here people still measured time by the seasons, not by the clock, and the past wasn't something to be erased but cherished. But this place, like so many I would visit, was a reminder that while America raced forward, it still carried with it echoes of a slower, simpler time. In Nameless, Tennessee, I found another example of this. The town, or what's left of it, clung to its identity with a kind of stubborn pride. It was here that I met a man who, when asked why the town was called Nameless, responded with a shrug. They just never got around to giving it a name. It was an answer that felt more profound the more I thought about it, as if the absence of a name somehow made the place more real, more connected to the earth. My journey took me next to the Deep South, where I found myself in Selma, Alabama. Here, the scars of history were fresh, and the struggle for civil rights was still palpable in the air. I walked the Edmund Pettus Bridge, where blood had been spilled in the name of equality, and spoke with locals who had lived through the turmoil. Their stories were a reminder that while some roads are quiet and forgotten, others still echo with the cries of those who once walked them. As the miles rolled by, I crossed into Appalachia, where the mountains loom large, and the air is thick with the scent of wood smoke. In Harker's Island, North Carolina, I met fishermen who still followed the rhythms of the sea, casting their nets as their fathers and grandfathers had before them. Theirs was a life that seemed as timeless as the ocean itself, untouched by the world beyond. In the Northeast, I found myself in Aroostook County, Maine, where the land stretched out in vast, empty plains. Here the winter was long, and the people, like the landscape, were tough and resilient. They spoke in clipped, no-nonsense tones, but there was a warmth to them that belied the harshness of their surroundings. I realized that the farther I traveled, the more I encountered a kind of resilience, a determination to hold on to what was important, even as the world changed around them. My journey eventually led me westward, to the deserts of Arizona, where the land was as stark and empty as my soul had felt when I first set out. But here, too, I found life. In the small town of Quartzsite, I met an old prospector who had spent his life searching for gold in the barren hills. He hadn't found much, but he didn't seem to mind. For him, the search was what mattered, not the finding. The road finally took me full circle, back to where I had started, but I was not the same. The blue highways had shown me a different America, one that lived in the spaces between the coasts, in the places where time moved slower, and life was measured in the small things. I had set out in search of something, though I wasn't sure what, and along the way, I had found it. The journey had stitched together the fragments of my life, and I had come to understand that the road, like life, is a journey best taken one small step at a time, with no clear destination in mind. What I found on the blue highways was not the grand narrative of America, but the smaller, quieter stories that make up the fabric of this country. Stories of people who, like me, had faced loss, change, and uncertainty, but who had found a way to keep moving forward. And in those stories I found a piece of myself, a sense of belonging that I had lost. The road had become my home, and the people I met along the way had become my companions in this journey of life. So I returned, not to the life I had left behind, but to a new one, shaped by the miles I had traveled and the stories I had gathered. The blue highways had shown me that there is no single American dream, but a multitude of dreams, each as unique and diverse as the people who live them. And it was in those dreams that I found my own, one that would carry me forward, wherever the road might lead next. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe the Sonic Library for more audiobooks. I hope this story left you with something to think about. Stay tuned for more new videos.